Thank you for giving me this opportunity. I'm Akhila Sivadas, the Executive Director of a not-for-profit organization called Center for Advocacy and Research. I founded this organization, and for the last 25 years have been involved in the entire process of community engagement. And the area of WASH, we have been at it from the last 15 years, particularly in the urban space, innovated on low-cost sanitation technique, generated a very innovative governance model called the single window, which I will be dealing with in my presentation. And of course, mainstreaming the entire WASH issue with all the other, CSOs working on gender and social inclusion. The title page tells you very clearly, that we are going to really talk about FSM, particularly desludging, through a community-centered process in a city called Bhubaneswar. You can see that it's in the eastern part of India and it's the capital town of a state called Odisha. At the outset, I would like to, state that this presentation has emerged out of a project that we are implementing in the two cities of both Bhubaneswar and Jaipur. And the aim is to strengthen what we call socially inclusive water, sanitation, and hygiene services for very marginal communities in informal settlements or urban slums. This is being supported by the Water for Women Fund, which is an initiative of the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade, the Australian government. The context will tell you very clearly that, there was a very sort of, shall we say, a favorable policy environment for FSM. The governments were actually going beyond constructing toilets to enforcing what is called the sanitation value chain. And this was not merely in terms of, the state-of-the-art infrastructure, but in terms of regulation. Very well-crafted, formulated guidelines to enforce the value chain at every segment was, conceived and put out. They are also modernizing, the process of modernizing the sanitation workforce, removing the lost vestiges of, manual scavenging, and, which is one of the worst forms of, human rights violation, and involving the sanitary workers in becoming sort of, petty or mini operators and entrepreneurs, and also more importantly, involving the self-help groups of women and transgender in the entire process of, modernizing sanitation and FSM. Now, this is really a great environment, a great window of opportunity for groups like us who are strengthening community engagement and what we call a demand-responsive process. What is the problem? Problem is the millions that are not accessing safe and many not even accessing basic sanitation services. So how do we provide them both affordable and dignified service? The situational assessment will tell you clearly that, out of the 300,000 population that are there, 1/3 is poor. It will also tell you that 98% are dependent on on-site septic management. 2/3 have septic tanks with partition, 1/3 have well-lined single pits, but none of them desludge. They have created very faulty designs in their pits, and there is a lack of motivation. It's neither affordable, nor is it properly regulated. It's thrown out into the field and into the open drain. So what is the point of my spending money on getting it desludged? It is in this context that we had to decide what to do. And what to do meant, that we had to make ready people for it. And the approach was, to build what is called a single window, a platform that aggregates, that actually educates, aggregates, enlists demand, ensures that the demand is met. So the minute we went into the communities, the first thing we did was to empower the communities. The empowered community members then formed what is called a community management committee, which included every section: disabled, elderly, single women, transgender, less privileged caste, indigenous populations. And they went about enlisting demand and reaching everyone. Then they federated at the ward level, which is an administrative level, with 2 members of the CMC or the Community Management Committee from each slum working at the ward level to form what is called a single window forum, which in turn linked up the community with the service providers. You can see from the next slide that the entire community, the process of community management, the entire process of community empowerment, starting from defining aspirations and demands to and strengthening participation, to having collective what is called decision-making process, to integrating them systematically with the urban local bodies and service providers, removing all the unscrupulous intermediaries, and last and not the least, being recognized now as FSM champions. Of the scores of champions, I'm going to now present 2 of them. One is Sarojini Sahu. You can see her photograph on the right side, on the left side, sorry. And she is started out in 2018 trying to get an approval for a toilet construction, get some subsidy, made no headway. The minute we mooted the idea of the Community Management Committee, she formed it. She galvanized all other households to get that toilet constructed, got it done, constructed it all in record time, and soon realized, that without safe containment, without desludging, no point having a toilet. So she started working with cesspool operators. She started managing all the demand. She started facilitating the desludging. She led from the front because she got her own pit, desludged in 18 months, and ended up by facilitating 76 out of 91 households in her settlement. Another gentleman is Rakesh Makkar, also a single window forum member, who did not have any personal problems, but he engaged in a struggle for 36 households to get their toilets constructed, and then got to know about FSM and started ensuring that process. He recognized its importance. He sort of trained on it, understood the sanitation value chain, collaborated day after day with all the government agencies, went to every household and imparted all the learnings that he had acquired, built strong community ownership, spearheaded the whole process, and also, succeeded in getting 34 out of 59 households, all of it mechanized, desludging done. Now, this what to do is simple. This defined for us what to do. Now we had to define on how to do. Now we were going to move on scale. It was not just about getting a few champions and getting a few leaders. This from what to how, we have symbolized it with a map. You can see it's a route map that is connecting the cesspool operators with 865 households, or a little over 800 households. And they've done it in a way to show that they're not only generating demand, but they also know how to manage the demand. But before I get into that, what are the steps they took? What are the barriers they faced? I've already told you in the earlier slide, there was lack of awareness, lack of knowledge, lack of conviction. There were many barriers to change. And of course, complete lack of connect with the sanitation system. All this was leading to unregulated, service provisioning, in turn leading to weak demand, and of course, skyrocketing the price, making it unaffordable and high. So these barriers of change had to be tackled very systematically. The first step they took was to build their own knowledge and awareness and conviction more than anything else on FSM. What we did was we handed over to them a visual checklist on what is called safe sanitation, which they ran across over 1,200 households, assessed the safety. Then they got trained on the entire process of sanitation value chain and FSM by experts from the governmental agency called the Odisha Water Supply and Sewerage Board. And then under the supervision of the board, they actually audited 199 pits and tanks. They realized, they internalized the whole knowledge. They realized both faulty design and unaffordable, unsatisfactory, and not properly demand-generated desludging. Not enough demand responsiveness was there. And once they visited the treatment plant, it was like seeing is believing. They got convinced that this entire thing can be mechanized, can be hygienic, can be scientific, and they can be part of the solution. That is what really strongly emerged from them. Then with that, the single window decided to pilot now across on a scale of about 21 wards and connect about 665 households to desludging. We were struggling at this time because although the government supported, we were still at the mercy of what are called private operators and very informal operators. We brought down the cost. The first thing we brought down was the cost from 900 rupees to 600 rupees to 492 rupees to 290 rupees. We brought it down fourfold. And this because we ensured efficiency. We created the route map, we did proper scheduling, and of course, we did a lot of user awareness and supported them, handheld them literally. The community handheld them till the desludging was done. For the poorer households, we also created both livelihood as well as ensured that they got their social security pension for the disabled, the transgender, elderly. Now the leadership had to move beyond just the user into creating a system. Now they had to go beyond just creating what is called user awareness and managing demand to actually building dedicated leadership. Not only make it affordable, but also ensure that the behavior change is sustained. All the rights of all the sections from provider, worker to the user is ensured, and that we most importantly destigmatize and dignify sanitation work. You know that the sanitation work in our context is linked with less privileged caste groups. Therefore, this whole issue of dignifying sanitation work became very critical. And meanwhile, the government also stepped in. They felt very confident that the pilot is working. They acquired what are called mini cesspool vehicles, the 1,000-liter capacity that could maneuver into the narrow slums and the narrow lanes of the slum. And then they moved into, and we scaled up the servicing to 865 households. This was the time when the government decided to mandate both CFAR and the single window to do an all-city, desludging. Now we are mandated to do desludging across the 67 wards and particularly the 437 settlements. And the most important thing for us to do was now to institutionalize the community engagement. At the slum level, we had to inform, educate, execute, capture details. All of that had to be done at the slum level so that, you make the whole process formal. At the ward level, we had to ensure coordination between the service provider and the household and the community. And at the city level, we had to track the movement of, cesspool vehicles to the wards and the households. So this 3-level of management has begun, and the single window has poised its, teams, the managers at every level. And most importantly, we had to remove all bias and preferential treatment, because that often happens with community groups. They tend to gang up and, service the people that are closest to them. And lastly, we had to strengthen what we call the communication protocols so that everything moves from one level to the other level without any confusion or, the syndrome of on the one hand, on the other hand was eliminated, and both the operator and the household is finally feels satisfied with the service. So what is our task ahead now? We have a minimum of 20,000 toilets. You've seen the numbers that we have reached. We have a 20-fold number in front of us for all the 437 slums. We have to ensure periodic desludging and schedule desludging. We cannot allow a slippage back into open defecation. Some work is still in progress. The integration of sanitation with micro enterprise, the skilling, the ensuring the safety and dignity of sanitation work is all under process. There are still challenges ahead of us. And more importantly, gender responsive planning to delivery of sanitation and all other wash services too needs to be ensured. We have to empower the ward committees. The ward committees are right now taking shape, but are still not very totally empowered. We have to build an all-stakeholder response. We have to make the poor at the center of the response, and of course, place communities, last but not the least, place communities at the center of it. That's where we are. We have a mammoth task ahead of us, but given the kind of, shall we say, bench strength that we have built in the community, we feel that, we are going to not only take this process forward, but also build what is called a strong, community engagement in the future scenario of every aspect of, water, sanitation, and hygiene services. I'd like to end by express, these are some of the photographs of all the kind of work that the community is doing at every level, from enlisting demand to actually ensuring, flagging off vehicles to be operated, ensuring desludging. The single window you can see is the third picture where they're actually sitting and, managing the entire cesspool vehicle operators and all this and all the other images that are going with it. We'd like to finally acknowledge the support that the entire community has given us. The entire community, all the stakeholders that have been part of the process, and the Water for Women Fund, Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade, Australian government, for their unstinting support. Thank you very much.
My name is Kwabena Nyarko, and the title of the presentation is Quantifying User Experiences of Sanitation, Container-Based Sanitation in Ghana. The other co-authors are Ben Tidwell, Ian Ross, Bismarck Jomfuasari, and Pippa Scott. We would like to acknowledge that this study was conducted by ISAN in partnership with Water and Sanitation for the Urban Poor, and it was funded through WhatsApp's Urban Sanitation Research Initiative, which was funded by UK Aid. We also acknowledge the role of Clean Team Ghana for their cooperation in the study and commitment to rigorous research. The study evaluated customer satisfaction with container-based sanitation CBS in Kumasi, and it was commissioned by WhatsApp as part of their Urban Sanitation Research Initiative. It was a longitudinal study of CBS customers before the service and 10 weeks after using the service, and we considered both qualitative and quantitative measures. The results showed customer satisfaction increased in almost every domain examined with the CBS service. Findings suggest that policymakers need to consider how factors such as safety, less disgust, less shame, and better privacy can improve sanitation demand and uptake of sanitation services. Monitoring and evaluation of outcomes beyond health demonstrate the broader impacts of improved sanitation on quality of life. The problem that this study addressed relates to access to safely managed sanitation services, which is relatively low in Ghana, currently 21%. An affordable and acceptable sanitation solution for dense low-income urban settlements is a problem. And the question is container-based sanitation a potential solution? What is container-based sanitation? It refers to a sealed cartridge installed in a freestanding toilet that is regularly changed. It adequately separates users from their excreta and is recognized by GMP as improved sanitation. Body of evidence of previous CBS studies focus on business models and cost. Hence, robust study on user-based experience is lacking. The study focused on the evaluation of satisfaction of customers of Clean Team Ghana with respect to quality of service and quality of life. Clean Team has been operating a CBS system in Kumasi for over 10 years, providing stable and therefore good comparison. Study was commissioned by WhatsApp as part of the Urban Research Initiative. The research method used was a longitudinal prospective cohort study of new Clean Team Ghana customers. 400 customers were enrolled at baseline. 292 completed the survey at endline, that's after 10 weeks. The measures that were assessed are quality, service quality, that is the product failure, frequency and regularity of pickups, sanitation quality, example is the cleanliness and accessibility, service satisfaction, example with comfort, and user sanitation related quality of life on 5 attributes, looking at disgust, health, privacy, shame, and safety. The results, let's start with the Clean Team user profile. Median age was 44 years, and interquartile range was from 36 to 51. Mean rent was 68 cedis a month. With respect to employment, 75% identified as self-employed or businesses, 9% casual workers, 6% unemployed, 5% retired. Mean time living in the same residence, landlord 17 years, tenants 6 years. Housing, with respect to the number of rooms, 70% live in a room and 22% in 2 rooms. Household size, mean household size is 3 and standard deviation is 2, and number of households in a house is 7 and standard deviation is 5. If we look at the previous toilet location by residents, we realize that for those who are renting, 71% were having toilets elsewhere, whereas 10 to 15% were using neighbors' compound. For the owners or the landlord, 68 were having toilets elsewhere prior to getting the Clean Team service. Results with respect to customer satisfaction. For the quality of life, that is avoiding disgust, health, privacy, safety, and avoiding shame, higher scores, we realize higher scores for all the 5 quality of life attributes after the Clean Team Ghana service. So when customers had the toilet facilities, the quality of life related to sanitation increased. Largest single improvement was for shame, and that has the lowest mean baseline level. And we realized that when they were using public toilets, we had a 0.61, and after having the Clean Team toilet, 0.91. Therefore, we have 0.3 increase in the SANCOL, that's the Sanitation Quality of Life Index. Weights used are interim from Mozambique, and further analysis will be done in due course. With respect to cost, satisfaction with cost of sanitation increased from 44% to 86%. Average cost for households per month decreased by $20 with the container-based sanitation compared to previous public toilet use. And we realized that satisfaction with respect to cost of sanitation was improvement. And we also realized that sometimes some of the customers were worrying about cost, and that registered increase from around 20% to 30%. Results with respect to gender. Satisfaction with ability to practice menstrual hygiene. Before Clean Team and after Clean Team, we saw a big improvement. Before Clean Team, most of them were not satisfied, and after having the Clean Team service, the level of satisfaction increased. We also have significant increase with satisfaction with ability to balance household duties and toilet use after having the Clean Team container-based sanitation. With respect to gender, Before and after, we saw increase for the females, and the increase for females was much higher than for males in terms of privacy, cleanliness, safety, and convenience. So we realized that with the gender, there was big improvement for females. In terms of service quality, smell when toilet is closed, only 3% reported that there was smell, and 2% excessive smell when opened. In terms of leaking toilets, there was no issue, and ever a time where they were unable to use the clean team toilet was only 7.9%, and container replaced twice weekly. Almost 96% had their toilet containers replaced, which was good. And other impacts of clean team toilets, they were able to use the toilet at night to urinate or to defecate. And that increased from 33% to 98%. And when we asked, is anyone in your household excluded from using the toilet due to physical or social issues? Before clean team, it was 5.1%, and after it reduced to 0.4%. In conclusion, clean team container-based sanitation users are highly satisfied with the service, especially compared with the public toilet services that they were using previously. These substantial improvements are particularly felt by women and girls and those with disabilities. Perception of safety, privacy, and disgust are important demand-side drivers of sanitation improvement. Sanitation-related quality of life is an approach that measures these. Policymakers need to consider sanitation outcomes beyond health to improve sanitation demand and uptake of services. Including quality of life indicators in monitoring and evaluating the performance of sanitation interventions is valuable in demonstrating the broader impact of sanitation, of improved sanitation. This is the team that did the work. Thank you.
The pit vac is the honey sucker that can go anywhere, up and down stairs or steep paths, through doorways or narrow alleyways, fitted with a 6-horsepower petrol engine and a Delaval oil lubricated rain pump. The pit vac can do anything a honey sucker can do, anywhere.
So, hello everyone, thank you for attending this presentation. So my name is Kafwembe. I'm the head of the Faecal Sludge Management Unit at the Lusaka Water Supply and Sanitation Company in Zambia. So I'll be sharing the experience in implementing Faecal Sludge Management as a citywide utility service, the case of Lusaka Water Supply and Sanitation Company. This is how my presentation has been outlined. I'll talk about the city sanitation profile, also the expanded mandate for utilities to be providing non-SWAT sanitation services, and also the citywide approach which was taken, and also talk about the performance of the service providers, and also talk about the inhibiting factors which were encountered along this journey, and also share about some of the lessons we've learned along this journey. So Lusaka is the capital city of Zambia. It has a population of 3.2 million people. And out of this, 70% resides in low-income areas or peri-urban areas. In terms of coverage, 9% are connected to the centralized storage system, and the 91% they rely on on-site sanitation systems, such as pit latrines, septic tanks, as shown in the pie chart. This is the sheet flow diagram which was done for the city of Lusaka. So 17% of the fecal sludge is safely managed, and the 83% is just going in the environment, possibly polluting the environment. So with all this, The mandate for the utility company was expanded, because previously it only focused on providing sewerage services to households who are connected to the centralized sewerage system. The licensing conditions were changed in April 2019 by the Water and Sanitation Regulator, which is the National Water Supply and Sanitation Council. The expanded mandate entails that utilities should also be providing services to households who are not connected to the centralized storage system. So with this, the name of the utility changed from being Lusaka Water Supply and Storage Company to Lusaka Water Supply and Sanitation Company. This is aimed at providing services to everyone in the city. So hence the citywide approach. In terms of the market structure, we divided the city into 3 zones as shown in the map there. So the yellow part is the northern zone, then the blue part in the middle is the central zone, and the green part is the southern zone. Service providers were contracted to provide pit latrine services in each zone, and each zone comprises of 4 service providers. So in terms of service provision, the septic tank market, they are accessing septic tank services on a free market basis. Then the pit latrine market is based on performance-based contracts, and the services are subsidized. So this is where the contracted service providers are providing the service. The contracts have been categorized into labor-intensive and also technology neutral. So in terms of customer segregation, low-income customers in peri-urban areas or low-income areas are accessing subsidized services by the contracted service providers. And non-low-income areas are accessing services by service providers on a free market basis. So the non-low-income areas mostly are comprised, they utilize mostly septic tanks. A total of 12 emptying teams were engaged on performance-based contracts. So we have 6 labor-intensive and 6 technology neutral. So the pictures there shows the technologies which are being utilized by the respective contracts. This is how the contract is summarized. The FSM operators are providing emptying services to households in low-income areas and who rely on pit latrines. And the households are paying a subsidized emptying fee to the operator. Then the operator, once they empty the pit latrines, they take the fecal sludge to the designated treatment plant for safe treatment and disposal. Because it is performance-based, they are being paid the top-up subsidy based on the amount, the volumes they take to the designated fecal sludge treatment plant. So at the end of every month, each service provider submit a performance report, which is subjected for verification, FSM unit, and also the independent verification agent. After the independent verification, the verification report is done, which is now taken to Lusaka Water to disperse the top-up subsidy to the FSM operators. So this is how the tariff is structured. So the households are paying a subsidized fee of $12.5 per cubic meter, and the top-up to meet the service cost is being paid by Lusaka Water Supply and Sanitation as a top-up subsidy to the service providers based on the amount of sludge they deliver at the treatment plant. The utility also has a dedicated FSM unit to manage the provision of the non-sewerage sanitation services. So this is the unit which is overseeing the provision of FSM services and also managing the 12 performance-based contracts. So the staff in blue, these are dedicated full-time employees of the unit, and also the the ones in gray, they are departments which are supporting the FSM unit. So FSM being a new service line in the utility capacity building, both on the service providers and the utility, is very key. So these are some of the capacity building activities we did, because the standard operating procedures stipulates that the emptiers to be engaged in emptying services, they should be vaccinated and also do medical fitness. So we facilitated for vaccination of the emptiers. So they were vaccinated for cholera, hepatitis B, and typhoid. And also, we also facilitated for the medical fitness of the emptiers before they start the emptying operations. They also underwent training in occupation health and safety, emptying techniques. This was done to strengthen their capacity in conducting emptying operations. Also, the emptiers also attended the training on the appropriate use of documentation. So this photo here shows the emptying team leaders who attended that training on appropriate use of documentation. Also provided PPE, which is personal protective equipment for the emptiers. And recently, we also provided for transportation in terms of light trucks, because transport has been a challenge and had an impact on efficient delivery of the service. So we recently provided light trucks on the rent-to-own agreement, in ensuring that the services are safely delivered, and also the service providers adhere to standard operating procedures. The FSM unit inspectors are doing inspections and monitoring to ensure adherence to the standard operating procedures. So we first established the inspection and verification system, and also developed processes and procedures for inspections, monitoring, and verification. So these are the procedures which were developed to guide the provision of the FSM services. Then, to ensure also uptake of the service by the community, we are also conducting marketing and community awareness. So before COVID, we used to have community meetings where we would create awareness about FSM services being provided, and we are also utilizing the Lusaka Water Supply and Sanitation Facebook page because it has a huge following. So, and also we are utilizing the news flash in the utility. And also in the COVID times, we are doing drive-through marketing because we can't hold community meetings as the gatherings have been restricted. So these are some of the things we are doing to market the FSM services. To ensure service provider coordination, we hold service providers forum on a monthly basis. So these are meetings where service providers share experiences and challenges during the emptying period. So this fosters cross-learnings among the emptying teams. This is how the service providers performed in 2020. I think the operation started in February. So along the months, as you can see from the graph here, we've seen an improvement in the volumes being collected by respective service providers. A total of 9,147 cubic meters out of the 1,453 cubic meters was emptied. So this is the technological neutral service providers. So this represents 29% average efficiency. So the dotted line represents the monthly average by the service providers, monthly average target. So from here we can see that only 2 service providers are meeting the monthly targets. This is due to their capacities. They've got much capacity than the other service providers. So in terms of treatment, transport, and equipment. So when we come to the labor and service providers, I think from February as well, we've seen an increase in the uptake of the service which has transmitted into increased sludge volumes, which have been sludged. In the last year, the average efficiency was 25%. So from the graph, only about one service provider is meeting the monthly target. Then the service providers are also being scored on 3 key performance indicators, which forms the basis on which the subsidy is dispersed. So the 3 KPIs are on occupation health and safety, customer service management, public safety during collection and transport. And from the graph, we see that in the first month when the operation started, the average didn't meet the 70%, because 70% is a target. So there were challenges in the startup, as some emptying teams didn't have PPE, and also some emptiers were not some of the emptiers were not vaccinated in some of the emptying teams. So to take them up, to ensure that they are complying to the KPIs we provided for vaccination, medical fitness, and PPE. So these are some of the inhibiting factors which we've encountered along the way. Yeah, poor containment facilities, inadequate transportation, which has inhibited the efficiency in delivery of the services. There's also limited baseline for the on-site sanitation facilities. This brings about a non-revenue potential for the customer base on on-site sanitation facilities. Solid waste has also been a challenge, as households dispose solid waste in the latrines, so it brings about challenges during emptying and also our treatment. There's also been inadequate enforcement of the Public Health Act, and also the cost of operation has increased as the cost of the chemicals used by the service providers to disinfect has gone up. And also treatment has also been one of the challenge. We only have 2 treatment facilities in the whole city, which are operating beyond capacity. And also during the pandemic, we experienced scarcity of local tools and equipment, specifically the barriers, as the suppliers used to import them from South Africa. But during that lockdown, that proved to be difficult. So what are some of the lessons we've learned along the way? Dedicated service areas brings about efficiency and quality in service delivery, and also service providers forums brings about continuous improvement on the service providers and also on the utility part. And FSM being a new service in the utility, capacity building is key in the utility and also on the service providers. So community awareness and marketing is essential to ensure continuous uptake of the service. And also there is some meaningful revenue which is generated from delivery of FSM services. Public-private partnership model we are implementing through performance-based contract has also brought empowerment through employment creation. So that's aside from providing safe sanitation services. A total of 100 emptiers were employed in the various emptying teams. So with that, thank you all for the attention.
Hi, my name is Emily Woods. I'm one of the co-founders and current COO of Sanitation. Sanitation is a social enterprise based here in Kenya that focuses on partnering with local governments to design and implement sustainable sanitation solutions. And we get a lot of requests for pilot fecal sludge treatment plants. Just a few months ago, Sasha Kramer from Soil reached out to us. She's been working with IDB on some really interesting results-based financing And IDB suggested, hey, let's do a pilot fecal sludge treatment plant to convert the pit latrine waste into maybe a solid fuel. And so Sasha brought that idea to us, and my first response was, why? And I say why not because I question the validity and the need of treating fecal sludge, but I question why do a pilot? Because the reality is that we've learned a lot about fecal sludge treatment plants in the past 10 years. Our sector has grown so far. We've proven technology, we've proven reuse models, we know ways of getting local partners on board, and it's time for us to consider more than just pilots. And when we think bigger is different, when we do small pilots, say you're cooking for 5 people, it's going to be quite different than when you cook for 50 people or for 500 people. In the same way, a pilot fecal sludge treatment plant is only going to offer so much proof when you're thinking citywide scale or replicating around an entire country. And this model that you see right here is our new expansion plant that Sanivation's designed in Naivasha, Kenya. And we learned a lot from our pilot treatment plants to get us here. But I want you to know that while we learned a lot, it is quite different than some of the designs I'm going to walk through today. And so the whole focus of today is to be clear on why we're doing fecal sludge treatment plants and how we could be more effective with our time and with our money. So first, a little bit of background about Sanivation. So Sanivation is a project developer based here in Kenya, and we both develop and operate fecal sludge services. We've been recognized locally here in Kenya at the national level, receiving awards like the Innovation Award for our fecal sludge solutions, as well as the international level, being recognized recently on Netflix in the Brave Blue World documentary, which recognizes not only Matt Damon, but Sanivation and some of the work that we're doing. And in the past 7 years, Sanivation has created more than 140 jobs. We've produced over 3,000 tons of solid fuel made from human waste. And we've saved more than 100,000 trees being cut down because of that work that we've done. And so today I'm going to walk you through the 3 fecal sludge treatment plants that Sanivations has built and operated here in Kenya, and talk through some of those learnings and how we maybe could have streamlined that position a little bit better. So our first fecal sludge treatment plant we did was in Sanctuary, which is a small farm outside of Naivasha. And really what the purpose was is that we needed to prove the process, technology, and customers for carbonized briquettes. And I say proof here because back in 2014, this hadn't really been proven. And we know because Sanivation now owns 2 US patents for the process and technology to do this work. And while we were producing these carbonized briquettes, we're also learning a lot about the market. And the largest customer within carbonized fuel is households. And while households have an annual market of millions of dollars here in Kenya, they only buy about 1 kg of fuel per day. And so while our gross margins were quite positive at Sanctuary, even at the small scale, we could never scale to more than about 25 tons per month because of the cost of sales and the logistic difficulties of doing that sales directly to households. So in our next fecal sludge treatment plant up in Kakamo refugee camp, we were still using carbonized briquettes, but now focusing on a B2B model, where someone like UNHCR, who currently buys lots of firewood and then distributes it to the refugees, maybe they could buy our carbonized briquettes at scale and distribute those instead. And sadly, because of lots of political issues, that never happened. So we also looked at other small businesses, restaurants and hotels, and these have a demand of anywhere from 1 to 3 tons per month. But just the distance from the refugee camp to get to enough of those customers made it cost prohibitive as well, where again, we never really hit that net margin, which we were aimed for. So in our next fecal sludge treatment plant was back here in Naivasha, and it officially operated starting in 2019. And this one, we wanted to focus on a minimal viable product for a process that we really thought could scale to a citywide solution. And so we were trying to think, what is the smallest design that we could do that could take in from current exhauster trucks that empty from pits and septics and instead produce an industrial fuel? Because industrial fuel is interesting because those customers, instead of 1 to 3 tons a month, they buy anywhere from 20 to 5,000 tons a month, enabling this ability to scale to citywide. And so you can see what's actually happening right now in Naivasha is our gross margins are positive and our net margin is right above positive because it's that small scale again to try and get there. And we use the learnings from this treatment plant to change the design of that scaled up model that I presented earlier. And while there was a lot of learnings that went into it, there's also a lot of differences. And so if I had to summarize what our key learnings from the past 10 years would be, I do it in these three. First is to focus designs with a purpose. And I gave very clear purposes on each of our pilot fecal sludge treatment plants that I presented. But to be honest, a lot of those purposes were not that clear when we started the design. It didn't come until much later looking back on that. And I think if we had really sat down and focused on the purpose before starting design, we could have been much more effective with what we were doing with our time and with our money. The second big learning is that purposes change depending on context. And the next slide, I'll dive into this a lot more, but what you're trying to get to, there might be other ways around it without having to build a pilot fecal sludge treatment plant. And the third big learning is that there are so many more fecal sludge treatment plants that exist now that we can learn from than there were 7 years ago. A lot of these things that we had to prove along the way that I just talked about now have been proven. And like the wheel, they don't need to keep being proven over and over again. We get to learn from the hundreds of fecal sludge treatment plants around the world on how to continually do this better. So let's talk about purposes and maybe different ways that you could reach that. So one might be, hey, I want to build a fecal sludge treatment plant to prove reuse market viability, which while a very important purpose, I want to encourage you that there might be other ways to do it. For instance, there are reuse producers from all over the world, and you could actually attain some of that reuse product and test the market without ever having to build a treatment plant. We did this with Oxfam in Uganda, where we sent 100 tons of our carbonized briquettes to Uganda and tested it with the market there to prove what was viable, what price, and what quantity. The second purpose you might consider is creating local champions. Also very, very important. Our Naivasha treatment plant has become the place to bring all these potential stakeholders to come and see, to feel, to understand, and they walk away so excited. But there's other ways to do it. There's a whole toolbox of different ways to increase partner trust, from citywide inclusive sanitation planning to ship flow diagrams to different capacity trainings. And if that's still not enough, maybe rather than building more pilot fecal sludge treatment plants, maybe instead you can fly your stakeholders or drive to the nearest fecal sludge treatment plants, because those are around. We would welcome anyone to come to our site and be able to learn from us and get champions excited about then going back and building a full fecal sludge treatment plant back in their homes. If your purpose is to prove technology, my first question to you is, has it already been proven? Because of tons of different fecal sludge treatment plants, there is a wide range of dewatering, drying, treatment, reuse technologies that have already been proven at all different sizes. And there's a lot we can learn from that. And then if it hasn't been proven yet, and maybe it is a new technology, I want to encourage you to verify that you're testing it in the way that it needs to be tested. For instance, in our Naivasha treatment plant that we have right now, it uses geofabric membranes for dewatering. This had never been done at a fecal sludge treatment plant operationally, so it was a new technology. We tested it out. It was fantastic. We have great learnings. If anyone wants to hear them, just ask. But when we're looking at that 10x scaled plant, we're not going to be able to use geofabric membranes anyway. We're going to have to transition to mechanical dewatering. And so that technology wasn't even tested at the right scale. So make sure you're considering that. And if you're designing a fecal sludge treatment plant to actually treat fecal sludge, this is the end-all be-all purpose. This is really why we want to be doing fecal sludge treatment plants. And I just want to encourage you to make sure that you build your treatment plant to match the need, both now and what's being collected now, but also after the lifetime of the plant. How is that population going to grow, and how is collection going to increase over that lifespan, to make sure that we're designing fecal sludge treatment plants that really last. And so I want to leave us today with a call of actions of things that I really want us to rally behind. And the first is that we need to be better about learning from each other. As I mentioned, there's tons of examples around the world, but a lot of that data is scattered. And I want to say thank you to groups like AVAG and Bill and Melinda Gates, who have tried to aggregate some of that information. But a lot of it is still design-based and leaves out a lot of the operational learning. I think it's time for us to have something like an open source database where anyone who visits treatment plants or hears about it can input data into context, to how to visit, to some of the big learnings there. And maybe even FSMA can host that open source database. But this way we can share that information more regularly. 2, be clear on your purposes for fecal sludge treatment plants. I've talked about this a lot today, but those different purposes will influence your design and ultimately your outcomes of what you get. And the 3rd, it's really time for us as a sector to move beyond pilot fecal sludge treatment plants. We've proven so many different models. We've proven so many different technologies. Now it's time to actually operate those at scale. And so funders, I want to encourage you, stop trying to force fecal sludge treatment plant design on pennies and in weeks. Let's instead invest that money that might have been a pilot fecal sludge treatment plant and do a quality feasibility phase where we can really look at those different market contexts and needs for good design. And for implementers and designers, I want to encourage you to push back on funders who are maybe asking for pilot fecal sludge treatment plants and really question, is that the size that we need? And consider that bigger is always going to be different. And so thank you all for joining me today. Again, my name is Emily Woods. I'm with Sanitation. And I really want to encourage this sector that it's time to move beyond pilots and design with purpose. Thank you so much.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. Today from India, we present a case study where we have piloted a rural FSM model, which is titled Using a Clustering Model to Connect Urban Fecal Sludge Treatment Plant with Rural Areas in Dhenkanal district of Odisha. This has been jointly developed with UNICEF and Center for Policy Research. This is a unique model where we are trying to address how rural FSM can be treated. Urban Odisha has been a forerunner in India how to handle the fecal sludge management. Our partner, Center for Policy Research, Ms. Anju Dwivedi is here, and she'll talk about how the journey of Urban Odisha has taken off, and I'll come in to present how we have connected along with CPR with the rural areas of Dhenkanal. So over to you, Anju.
Yeah, thank you, Shipra. Just to initiate the discussions, I'll just take you through the presentation, how we have structured it. So we have structured the presentation across putting a context to this case study, then why there was a need and why this project, which Shipra was talking about, came into being. What is the strategy that we took as a plugin or a district level clustering and greenfield, where we are in the project as a current status, and what are the key learnings that we are getting from the field and from the state. So like Shipra was mentioning that Odisha is one of the provinces or the state in India in the eastern part of the country. So if you look at India's map, it is near West Bengal, on the eastern side of the map, where we from Center for Policy Research, with the support of BMGF and Aragyam and a local organization called Practical Action, started piloting a project in 2015 on urban FSM. So just to put in a context, though India, has progressed a lot on sanitation from 2015 onwards, when Swachh Bharat Mission, a major program, the flagship program of the central government, and Amrut program of the central government came into being. But just before that, in 2013, when we were looking at India, looking at the dismal picture of India actually painted through various, reports like Joint Monitoring Program, and also India census had revealed that open defecation was rampant in India, and more so in rural areas than in urban areas. But in urban areas also there was a problem, because India in the past had lots of sanitation programs for the rural sector. I will not go into the details of that, but urban had no big program like, rural sanitation sector in India had witnessed. So there was this concern that, there are many small cities, they're not connected by sewer network. So where the fecal sludge goes. And if we are not going to focus on the smaller cities or pay attention to them, the environmental pollution and impact of health is going to be a problem. Okay, so in Odisha, we started this project called Project Dirbil with the support from BMGF. And Odisha state government was very keen to implement this project. But in India, at the same time, many such projects in other states had also taken up. In 2016-17, there were policy environment which was changed because there was a national fecal sludge management policy that came into 2017. Many states adopted it. Many states with the medium and large size cities started experimenting with FSM. And Odisha was also one of the states. But we piloted 2 projects in the state with BMGF funding. That was Angul and Dhenkanal. So this case is basically on Dhenkanal, which Shipra is going to talk about in greater detail. But now when there is a greater policy environment and uptake on FSM by the central government also, what we are also saying that, increasingly there's more fund channelized on fecal sludge management in the urban as well as in the rural space because of the greater policy thrust. And now at this time, we are also looking at building a stable market and industry structure with involvement of communities in managing the FSM, like the self-help groups, building the OSS systems and pushing for standardized on-site sanitation systems also. And there is a national digital platform which is coming up and again experimented in Odisha on how FSM can be monitored on a large scale through a digit. Just to begin, just show that this is like when we started in 2015, this project Nirmal came into being in Odisha, and we helped the state government to come up with the policy, first policy in India by any state on FSM, which was actually Odisha Urban State Sanitation Strategy. And now this now many cities in Odisha have started coming up with the FSTP. So by 2024, I think all the urban local bodies, that is 114 urban local bodies in the state, are going to be covered through FSTPs. In the initial phase, there were like 11 cities which were covered. Now they are taking more than 100 cities, which will be soon completed. So just to show that why then rural sanitation attracted us, basically Dhenkanal came up with a FSTP, as I mentioned, which was 27 KLD FSTP in 2018. It was inaugurated by the Chief Minister of the state with other FSTPs which came in other cities. And we also felt that at the same time, SBM Rural, which was Swachh Bharat Mission Rural, was also gaining a lot of prominence. And the major thrust was, of course, on toilet construction initially. But with the revised guidelines, which came 1.5 years ago, a larger thrust has been placed on FSM, realizing that Odisha and India basically undertakes 2 kinds of surveys. One is the National Rural Sanitation Survey, which is called NARS, and national and also NSS, which is sample survey, which India undertakes other than census. All those surveys revealed that there was a huge preponderance of on-site sanitation systems. Single pits were still dominating in Odisha, though rural sanitation programs have been putting a lot of thrust on twin pit toilets, which are properly constructed. But if you look at Odisha, there were basically more single pit than twin pits, if you can see in that graph. And we also, when started working with UNICEF, did a survey of Dhenkanal to find that there was more single pits than twin pits constructed, even under Swachh Bharat Mission. So that created a condition for fecal sludge management to take place. Well, as per Shipra, you want to take from here?
Thank you, Anju.
Oh.
So as you see that all the data which the government has collected, as well as the primary survey, which UNICEF as well, along with its partner CPR, has done in the Dhenkanal district, we found we were trying to understand why rural FSM was needed. So in SBM1, which was from 2014 to 2019, the focus has been on the access to the toilets. So a large number of toilets were constructed across India. So even in Odisha, as well as in the other parts of the country, we found that single pit was dominating across. But single pit and double pit, that's the model which is promoted by Government of India, is actually the most effective rural FSM options available in the country. If you have a twin pit, one pit is used for a certain period of time. When it is filled, the other pit is open, and the first pit gets decomposed and the manure is ready. Once the second pit gets filled, you come back to the first pit. That's the best rural FSM model which is available. But that model cannot be used across as the most effective option for FSM, because there are certain issues which needs to be kept in mind. So that is what we try to do. Why and what are the different options are available for rural FSM? The first, you will see the various blocks where we try to see that if the water table is below 3 meters, single pits can be converted from single pit to double pit. It can be retrofitted. But where the water tables are very high, then you need to go for other options, which we are calling as greenfield options. As Anju said, that urban facilities are available in various parts of Odisha. So whichever the neighboring gram panchayats or the villages are there, which are surrounding the urban facilities, can be plugged in. So we see that there are actually 3 options which are available. Either in rural areas, we convert from single to double pit, or the villages which are near the urban facilities can be plugged in to the urban facility, or we have a decentralized greenfield options with different technology options which can solve the rural FSM issues. So that is how the project was designed, keeping the Dhenkanal project, keeping in mind that we wanted, UNICEF and CPR wanted Dhenkanal to emerge as one of the first district in India to have safely managed sanitation as defined by SDG and Government of India's vision of rural sanitation. Before I go into this, I also wanted to say that UNICEF has also supported Government of Odisha in developing a rural sanitation policy along with CPR, very closely with the government, in which it covers how it is the first SDG aligned policy in the country, in which it mentions how we should look at the access, how we should look at the treatment aspect, and the equity aspect, gender aspect needs to be looked at. Looking at the sanitation policy and the need for rural sanitation and the need for rural FSM, which is very clearly defined in the SBM2 of Government of India program, Dhenkanal was designed taking into consideration the key stakeholders, which involved states, rural and urban development department, the district administration, which in this case is the Dhenkanal district, the local governance, which is the gram panchayats, and the 2 development organizations, UNICEF and Center for Policy. Center for Policy was chosen because they had already been working in the urban facility with BMGF funding, and we wanted to use their expertise to expand this into the rural areas. The primary objective or the strategy for this entire project was twofold. As I said in my earlier slide, either the existing facility which is there in the urban areas, we plug in the neighboring gram panchayats. This model, we are calling it as plugging in, and the areas which are not be plugged in, which means which are purely rural areas, we give them decentralized options, and which we are calling is that greenfield solutions. So these are the 2 primary objectives or strategy for this project in Dhenkanal. If I just introduce Dhenkanal, which Anju has already kind of introduced, this is the eastern part, this is in the eastern part of India, and you can see that there are 8 blocks. Each district is divided into blocks. So there are, this Dhenkanal district has 8 blocks. It has 212 rural local bodies and 4 urban local bodies. There are 150 villages, and the population is nearly about 1 crore, rural population. When we started actually working on this, so it is not as simple as it was just creating an infrastructure. This was beyond creating the infrastructure. So we had to build capacities of the various local institutions as well as the state government. We had to raise awareness among citizens and also look at operation and maintenance. So this project was beyond infrastructure. And actually, the state government, both rural and urban, very amicably came forward to support this entire initiative because it was actually aligned in the as per the SBM guidelines. So the entire project started with situation assessment because we needed to actually justify whether this actually needed to create the plugging in model as well as the greenfield options. So situation assessment, how much of single pit is there, how much of septic tanks is there, and how many double pits are there. So the slide which Anju showed in the earlier slides, that was the findings which came in, and it showed that quite a number of single pits still exist in Dhenkanal, and I'm sure it exists in the other parts of the country. This was followed by clustering on the GIS platform. So all the 198 gram panchayats which are there in Dhenkanal were clustered together. There was a lot of demand generation, SBCC, and including IEC plan collaterals were developed. A lot of technology identification was there. What kind of technology will suit there? What is the soil condition over there? What is the water table over there? A lot of criteria were kept in mind before deciding which technology would fit which part of the country. And we did a stakeholder mapping also to understand what is the roles and responsibilities of each stakeholder, because this is a multi-stakeholder project at the district level, at the local gram panchayat level, as well as at the state level. So the first step which we took was the plugging in. The urban facility, which was initially which came up in about 2018, it started functioning then. It was the first plant in Odisha, and it had a capacity of 27 KLT. Both the organizations, UNICEF with the support of CPR, studied what is the capacity and how much it can still take in more sludge from the neighboring areas. The survey was done, and analysis said that there is still a capacity from which we can bring in sludge from the neighboring gram panchayats. Post the analysis, it was identified. If you see the map, this is the map of Dhenkanal. The yellow portion is actually the urban municipality where some urban plant exists. So the blue areas demarcate. It shows that the neighboring gram panchayats can actually plug in and bring their sludge and put the sludge in the urban facility, which is there in the yellow area. The other areas where the urban plants are coming in is the red part in the upper part of Dhenkanal, which is coming up there. And there are two more plants actually. So the yellow area and the pink areas shows the neighboring plugging in areas. Actually, the blue and the yellow areas have been zoomed, and you can see on the second map how the plugging in model is actually working out. If you look at this map carefully, you see that there are 3 plugging in options available in the Dhenkanal district. The other areas which are not plugging in, there are purely rural areas, and you need FSM solutions in that part of the district as well. UNICEF and along with CPR did a lot of data analysis and developed knowledge products which helped in the decision making of how the rural gram panchayats, the neighboring gram panchayats, or the peri-urban gram panchayats could plug in their sludge coming from these gram panchayats into the urban facility. So a memorandum of agreement was facilitated between neighboring gram panchayats which fall into a radius of 10 kilometers. And if you can see this picture, MOA, memorandum of agreement, was being signed between the rural local bodies and the municipality. This was chaired by the district collector and his team. So successfully, it was signed on 28th of December, and post that, various contracts, the vehicles which was moving from the district, from the urban facilities, was amended so that it could move into the rural areas, and other various contracts were amended so that these facilities could be availed by the peri-urban gram panchayats also. There was also a case where it also needed to be cross-subsidized, and this money came in from the Finance Commission funding of the gram panchayats. So this is how the plugging in model works, and we are still going ahead, and these systems are working. Various SHG groups are actually managing the trucks, movement of the trucks, handling the trucks, as well as the urban plant. It has started off from December, and we are successfully seeing an increasing trend. Now we come back to the areas which we cannot plug in, which we are calling it as greenfield. You can see that clustering model was adopted by using a GIS platform, and various clusters were developed, keeping in mind the topography, accessibility, and administrative boundaries. A lot of clusters came up in the Dhenkanal district itself. Now, the next approach was one of the clusters was selected for piloting this FSTP plant. So what are the soil conditions? What is the water table? What are the other factors? What is the funding availability? Or keeping these different criteria in mind, a technology was worked out. And we are in the process where a DPR has been made, which is a detailed project plan which has been made, and it has been submitted to the government of Odisha. And we are going, probably once this project gets finalized, we will be going ahead with that technology in the ground in one of the clusters. So if I summarize the success factor behind this initiative, because this is the first rural FSM piloting which has happened in Odisha, as well as I'm sure that it is a kind of a first district-wide approach which has happened in the country. So you might find rural plants, you might find urban plants, but taking district as a unit, which is actually one of our administrative unit in the country, we have taken it where we have seen how an urban and a rural areas of a district can be handled together. So it has taken a top-down as well as a bottom-up approach, which has made it successful. So this involved a situation assessment, GIS analysis, as well as mapping, creating of infrastructure and capacity building. Social and behavior change has been a very, very important component, because making people realize that they need to empty their single pit, they need to empty their septic tanks, they need not put their sludge which is coming out from the pit into an area, or just throw it out in a drain or in just an empty area. It needs to be treated and handled properly. That mindset, not only of the people, but also of local leaders, district administration, state authorities. We have done social behavior change communication at various levels, which is a very important component. So SBCC as well as capacity building, consensus building, where the greenfield plant or a technology will be set up, the land from the government. These people were they were involved at the planning stage right from the beginning. If you involve them right from the beginning, I think it makes it very easy. The review workshops involves a local leader from the Gram Panchayat to a people at the district level. The district collectors have various meetings with the sarpanches, which is the local leader at the Gram Panchayat, and setting up a coordination meeting, because it is a multi-stakeholder project, setting up a coordination meetings, which actually help in the momentum of this project. So the learnings have been that actually conversion of single pit to double pit, though it might be the best solutions for handling in situ solutions for handling rural FSM, but one needs to keep in mind this blanket approach will not work in the rural areas. One needs to look at other options, because there will be high water table areas, there will be different soil conditions, there might be different topographies. So one needs to understand that we need to look at various options to address rural FSM. The urban-rural convergence within the well-defined regulatory framework is very, very essential, because in this country, not just Odisha, though Odisha has been a forerunner, but there are various urban plans which are coming across the country. It is very important that we show rural-urban convergence. This is a very, very replicable model. And district-wide approach, as I said, we need not look at just urban solutions or just rural solutions. We need to look at district as a whole. This will give you a very comprehensive rural FSM solution. To address rural FSM, it is very important to look at SBCC, which is a very, very critical component, to make people understand that just not conversion from single pit to double pit is the solution, but it is also important to sensitize them how they can actually look at it from different perspectives. We need to have wall paintings, we need to have hoardings, we need to have interpersonal communication. Various modes and techniques need to be adopted for reaching out for the rural FSM. Evidence building. As for this project, we had started off with a primary assessment as a secondary analysis. I guess for every district, we need to have quite rapid assessment to understand what needs to be done for that particular district. So it is evidence building and consensus building, because we also ensured that local leaders, as well as the district administration, as well as the state administration, was involved at the planning level. And last but not the least, coordination mechanism is very, very crucial to ensure that this is actually a successful initiative going forward. So I would like to thank you from UNICEF as well as Center for Policy Research side for listening to us, understanding us, how this initiative has taken place. So it has started off in late 2019, and it is still going on. But I'm sure this will be a very, very replicable model. This has a lot of learnings, and I'm sure this will be of a lot of help to a lot of you. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Pritum. I am working in Bangladesh with water and sanitation for the urban poor. We are here trying to help the urban dwellers to reach for sanitation services and facilities, irrespective of their socioeconomic status. SWEEP is a sanitation service through which we facilitate the delivery process of a pit emptying service in 3 major cities of Bangladesh, in Dhaka, in Rangpur, and Chattogram. And we use to facilitate PPP model, where the city authorities work with private entrepreneurs, and we are currently working with 4 entrepreneurs in to provide sanitation service to the urban dwellers in 3 cities. We ensure inclusive tariffing, we ensure the capacity building of the entrepreneurs and as well as the city authorities, so the model sustains. We also provide innovative sales and marketing solutions so that we can reach last end people with the service, including the people living in low-income communities. In SWEEP, we deliver pit emptying and safe pit emptying and transportation services, and the city authorities actually provide infrastructure for treatment and reuse of the fecal sludge. When COVID-19 pandemic hit Bangladesh in March 2020, all businesses and all course of life get stopped. Emergency lockdown was here, and most of the businesses got stopped. Commercial activities and institution was shut down. But SWEEP, unlike the other services, it continues because it's an emergency service, and we have to continue throughout the lockdown, and we are throughout the time. But unlike the normal time, the demand downsized, the nature of customers and the nature of market changed. So the entrepreneurs urges us to come up with some solution which might help them to have their business back on track. So what we did, we designed a study in June. We considered the last 6 months data from October 2019 to March 2020 to understand the average of the business. And we also considered the data in first 2 months, April 2020 and May 2020, after pandemic. So it's more like a pre-pandemic and during pandemic situation comparison. We tried to develop case studies. We tried to find out answer of 10 research question from analyzing the business data and from reviewing their strategies, and try to discover the ground reality and come up with solution that might work. So what we find out in case of marketing, entrepreneurs are actually trying some traditional marketing, which are mostly interaction based with the customers. But due to COVID-19, the door-to-door marketing or or customer counseling or commission-based marketing all actually stopped or partially stopped, because there was no physical interaction. There was a countrywide lockdown. But some of the entrepreneurs, we found that within these 2 months, to cope up with the situation, started trying digital means or linking other business to promote their business, but that was scattered, informal, and saturated. And when it comes to the business performance, we found that the delivery they were offering downsized pretty much. For the Dhaka-based entrepreneur, is downsized to 20% from the normal, and for the other two cities, for 3 entrepreneurs, it in around 50%. We found that 6 times in these 2 months, in Rangpur and Chattogram, it happened that the entrepreneurs received call for emptying service, but they cannot deliver the service just because of social prejudice. People were thinking that the huge truck might carry COVID-19 with it and can cause community transmission of COVID-19. However, for corporate calls, they were missing the orders due to financial negotiation. And we also found that 6 out of 10 customers, they are choosing the unsafe alternative services due to not connecting with the sweep service, due to lack of marketing or due to lack of the reach oriented activities by the entrepreneurs, which was actually for COVID-19. The business decreased on to 15% for Dhaka based entrepreneur, because in Dhaka based entrepreneur, the most of the customers are from corporate end for the profit end. And the other cities, the households are the major customer base. And the most drastic thing, the operational expenditure, it surges too much that it's above 330% for the Dhaka based entrepreneur. However, when we look into the revenue map, we can find that not all the entrepreneurs are losing their market, but one of the entrepreneur based in Chittagong, they are doing good even in during the pandemic. So after knowing all this, we come up with the entrepreneurs to develop a co-creation of a hybrid strategy, a localized solution for all the entrepreneurs based in 3 cities, with 5 objectives: to maximize the number of sales lead, to establish that in customers' mind that sweep is a contactless service, to establish that sweep can be ordered through call and without any kind of touch or going anywhere, to use unconventional means to reach the vulnerable people, and to capacitate the sweep team to deliver COVID-19 standard service, which actually incorporate their occupational health and safety as well. So we have designed few activities like capacity building, awareness raising, sensitization, engaging NGOs and other public health initiatives, engaging more commission-based agent who will receive commission after the service deliveries, and many more like social media and others. So what we try to ensure that those activities must serve the objective in anyhow. Some of them were serving multiple, and some of them were serving one singular objective. However, we start from July and continue up to December to understand the changes we actually made, or if there is anything actually changed. If you compare the performance from during pandemic performance from April 20 to December, the average reached up to the a scale almost like the pre-pandemic. It 95% recovered for the Dhaka-based entrepreneurs, and almost 100% or above 100%, because in some cities the strategy works so well, they are now currently selling more service from the pre-pandemic situation, because demand is a growing thing. We found that only from SMS, I mean delivering SMS and making people aware that the service is still available and you can order it online or by calling, we generated 3.3% of the lead, and the conversion ratio reached thousands of customers, and we also received hundred of calls, and 3.3% of the calls became service, and there is a 15% retention as well. We know that this will turn into service in coming months, maybe in future. The commission-based agent helps the entrepreneurs to get 100 plus jobs last 8 months. The percentage of FS management come almost to an average like pre-pandemic situation. Whereas 6 out of 10 people we are losing as the customers, right now we are losing only 3 people from the potential customer list during June to December. The income restored as well, you can see. We also help the entrepreneurs to bring down the operational expenditure to almost average. At a glance, this is the revenue stream. You can see that the blue is for Dhaka-based entrepreneur. Their average income before pandemic was 218K per month, whereas 126K for the green one, the Chittagong-based entrepreneur. So this is right now, if you can see that April was very hard, May was very hard, but from June and upward, they are doing a progress, and this is the time where we started putting the hybrid strategy in place. So now we are going to talk how much the whole thing helped the hybrid strategy. Is it the only thing that helped the business to heal? Actually, no. But it helped pretty much. I mean, because the situation, the first one, people adapted already the situation, and things are right now pretty normalized. People are taking precautions, but the businesses are open, the commercial activities are open, so the production is ongoing, and people are moving to the office and other things. So people already adapted. That situation helped us to heal the service pretty much. The hybrid marketing, yeah, it helped because we already show you that the marketers, they manage more than 100 jobs for the entrepreneurs in 3 cities. So yes, unlike that, Facebook and other social media we used help people to get sensitized about the service, where we also find that don't only find new jobs from the social media and other platforms, but we also retain some job. And another is marketing co-creations. We come up with local solutions. I mean, we don't come up with the similar solution for Dhaka-based entrepreneur, Rangpur-based entrepreneur, and Chattogram-based entrepreneur. It was pretty different and pretty local. So it helped us to heal the business as well. And affiliated marketing. COVID created a sense that contactless services are good for not transmitting COVID. So we tried to use that sensitized mentality of people and try to promote that sweep is also a contactless service where you can order it by call, and the service will be delivered without touching any of your household or other things. So we tried to pick up those points and try to put it in our strategy. However, we have pretty much other learnings as well. Few are the learnings, like we could have choose more useful keywords to sensitize the decision makers of the households or the commercial entities who are using Facebook and other medias, because we found that we mostly reach the young people who are not actually the decision makers, but it helped them to sensitize. We can also, like the entrepreneurs could have been more capacitated for demand tracking. It might help us to retain more customers from the calls, or convert pretty easier or more effectively. But we also found that positive things, that people who are tenant in the big cities are also asking that if such service is available in their hometown or not. So which is clearly an indication that people want such service in small cities as well. The entrepreneurs receive hundreds of calls, thousands of people sensitized as well. This is how we actually worked with this hybrid strategy, which a few of them are currently adapted by the entrepreneurs by themselves, and they are now practicing that with their operational cost, because few of the components succeeded, and we're still looking into the research. We will track the progress until end of March 2021. So yeah, this is all. Thank you, everyone. And if you have anything to ask me, please write to me. My email address is put here. Thank you. If you have any questions or comments about what I have covered in my presentation today, please leave them in the comment section. Please also consider joining one of the live discussion sessions to share your thoughts. You can find a schedule for the session on the agenda page. Thank you.